Cool. Well, thanks again for joining. I'm hoping as that pings, that means people are being admitted, which is great to see. As is typical with some of these mornings, I think we'll see a few people come in a touch late. But for those online, just to kind of forewarn, we might overrun. And so feel free if you need to disappear and duck out at the top of the hour. Totally understandable. I think this is automatically recorded and transcribed. So if you need to reference it back, then please do. But yeah, I guess a warm welcome to everyone in the room and who's joined us virtually. First time I've held one of these events virtually, which is always a bit tricky. Had a fair amount of technical glitches this morning, so that's all nice to be behind us. I guess before we get into the discussion this morning, just a few housekeeping things from me. There's no planned fire alarm that I'm aware of this morning, but should there be a sound of an alarm, there'll be Deloitte staff in the building, follow the building guidance, and there'll be clearly marked exits on the way out. Facilities, should you need, bathrooms out this door here, through the breakfast bar for those in the room, and through that main room there. So for those joining online, as I say before, we've tried to make this as easily accessible and joinable for those who are a bit further afield to London. So do bear with us. We're trying to make this as engaging and involved as possible. There's a whole Q&A section on there, and Liam, bless him, I'm going to stare at him a lot, is moderating that because I'm the least technical minded person in the room, which is probably why we had those hurdles earlier this morning. But yeah, by very warm welcome. By way of introduction, I'm Brennan Ware, and I lead growth and client engagement activities in our Operate to Scale service within our managed solutions business here at Deloitte. So really nice to have you all here and joined us and making the effort to join us this morning. As a bit of context, within managed solutions, we support clients across a whole number of needs and requirements that they may have around capacity, scaling up and down where required, and they kind of lack specialist skill sets on their side. We work across a whole host of industries, financial services, starting some 25 years ago, fast forwarding now to government and public sector as well, in a number of other industries. Within Operate to Scale specifically, we've been working with Talent Unlimited over the past year, providing operational and commercial support. So as part of their growth journey, really nice to have them along today. And that work has given us a really unique view of many of the scaling and hiring challenges that we're discussing today. It's also given us a close appreciation to an importance of finding the right skill sets efficiently and surfacing the right talent in a very meaningful and efficient way. So really genuinely delighted to have you guys here, and Gemma, who joins us as well, and Andrea. We have a real breadth of operational background, hiring background, people management background, technical implementation background, particularly around recruitment and much more broader than that. There's a whole host of experience that we can draw upon today. So I'm going to stop talking real soon, but I guess you'll have all seen on the invite that we're talking about what we wish we had and how AI is changing hiring for the operator. And hopefully this panel can provide a really good conversation around that. We're also going to explore laterally in the hour that we have here. And again, we might overrun slightly, but we'd like to bring to life many of the theories we're talking about in a specific use case that we in Managed Solutions leverage, and how we address certain challenges internally, but also in client workspaces, if you like, in terms of workflows and technical implementation around talent, recruitment, and such like. So yeah, Gemma and Ed will lead that for us we'll leave about 15, 20 minutes for that after our discussion this morning as well. So I guess to start, rather than me introduce each of you, and your names are very helpful on the screen, and hopefully those dialed in can see that as well, but perhaps starting with you, Andrea, it'd be great for you to introduce yourselves, maybe a brief summary of your background, what brings you here today, what interests you about this discussion, and sort of your unique perspective that you bring to just for those that have joined us this morning.
Well, thank you. Yes, so I'm Andrea. My background is in people. So I was the Chief People Officer for Pret and Manger I worked there for 23 years and I was the Chief People Officer for about 15 of those. I left 3 years ago and now I'm a non-exec director, bit of a people advisor, and I do quite a lot of mentoring as well. And I talk to a lot of people directors in my network, and we're always talking about how to do our jobs better and more effectively and more efficiently. And when I came across Talent Unlimited, I thought it was a bit of a game changer. So I'm here to talk a little bit about that.
Awesome. Really nice to have you. Ed.
Hi, my name's Ed. Before I will introduce myself, before I do, I just wanted to say a special hello to Tom. Tom is affectionately known to us as Vietnam Tom. He's helping us to expand in the US, and he lives in Florida. So I think he got up about 3 o'clock this morning. He's probably on his third cup of coffee. I did tell him we'd send him the video, but he insisted on joining us. So welcome, Tom, and everybody else too. My background is about 30 years in retail hospitality. I started my career at Greggs. I then went to Pret. And to give you an idea of how long ago that was and how old I am, Pret had 32 shops when I joined. I spent 10 years there, and the last 4 years of those were as head of operations for out of London. So I've had all the airport sites, all the high volume, high staff turnover, high recruitment sites there. And I had the pleasure of working with Andrea while I was there. And at Talent Unlimited, I'm a co-founder and CEO.
Thanks, Ed. Really nice to have you. Gemma.
Yeah.
Thank you, and yeah, it's lovely to be here today with all of you. My name is Gemma Fitzhugh. I am an assistant manager here at Deloitte. My team support clients advising on technology and how that technology can be used to support and optimize processes, specifically around talent and workforce management. And that's whether that's through AI, digital transformation, process optimization, or implementing new tools. In terms of my background, I've got 10 years experience in talent acquisition. So I worked for a recruitment agency, but also worked in in-house TA teams at Accenture and Deloitte. So having sort of the understanding of the operational reality of fast-paced, high volume, end-to-end recruitment means that I can sort of bridge the gap between that and technology. And that's also why I'm really passionate about my role, because I understand how difficult recruitment can sometimes be and how much of a difference is made when you have that great technology and process in place to support.
Yeah, really good. Fantastic.
I'm the other Ed, Ed Godwin, also co-founder of Talent Unlimited, but not a tech background. So my background for the last 30 years, Chief People Officer, HRD roles in various retail hospitality brands. So really at the sharp end of hiring, where it's fiercely competitive, where the volume is huge. I think at one point my first big job was Monsoon Accessorize. And I think we were getting 10,000 applicants a week across 800 stores, and we had to find a way to manage that. And so for me, as time has passed, a lot has changed, but a lot has stayed the same. We're still facing those same challenges, and technology can help. When I started, we were using a whiteboard to record our vacancies. Then we got Excel, and we all thought the world had changed, but only one person could log into it at any one time. So if you went on lunch and you left yourself logged in, you'd be shot when you got back to the office. So as technology changes, we adapt. And I think for me, what's really interesting about this is this changing technology actually is a bit different. This enables us to rethink how we approach things and how we tackle today's problems. So that's the bit I'm really interested in.
I think a few of us probably use Excel and still experience various frustrations with it, but I'll just leave that there. Ed, I think sticking with you, if that's okay to sort of kick things off with the first question here. I think between the four of you, just based on what you've just said, there's awful lot of hiring experience here, and beyond, people management and so on and so forth. But I guess, Ed, starting with you there, just finishing off on some of that context that you've just alluded to. From your perspective, and I guess coming on to the rest of you, what's sort of changed in hiring, from when you first started, apart from the Excel thing and whiteboards?
I think we've got to talk about scale. I think is the big thing. And when I started, you post a job, you might get 40 applicants, very manageable. You do it today, you're getting like 300, and it's how do I get to the best candidates quickly. And I think one thing that I'm noticing in the media a lot, which really winds me up, is this sort of position that, oh, the CV is dead. You know, look, get rid of CVs. No one needs those anymore. I know there'll be people in the room probably and online who agree with that sentiment. I don't. I think CV is a perfectly valid way of getting a good understanding of what someone's done, a good starting point to build a conversation from. But I think what's changed and what I think is happening is that we're now asking more of that CV than we ever did before. It was never meant to take you from 1,000 applicants down to the 20 you want to see. That's not what the CV was for, but because that scale is just rocketing, that's what we tend to do. And for me, it's not about get rid of the CV, it's about rethinking the process. How do we build a layer in? How do we use technology to enable more people to go beyond the CV? Which at the moment I think is too fewer people are getting that chance. It's how do we use technology to do that?
Yeah, really interesting. Gemma, any order you guys like, actually. I'd like to keep this quite informal if possible,
Yeah, I'm happy to.
if you get inspired.
Yeah, so if I think about when I started working in recruitment for sort of a small recruitment agency, so much of my day was spent on administration. So it would be having great conversations with candidates and clients, but then spending ages writing up my notes. Whereas now we have recorded calls, we can transcribe and have a beautifully polished using AI summary of exactly what was discussed and sort of key next steps. And then similarly with organising interviews, so much back and forth between the hiring manager and the candidate, whereas now we have these amazing self-serve scheduling tools. And I think the real impact of that is that the recruiter role sort of moves away from being more admin heavy and can focus on more of the value add activities and being that real strategic business partner. And I found that very true when I joined Deloitte. We have great technology, we're very lucky, we have great processes in place. So when I started working with clients who were looking to do things like reduce agency spend, it was being able to really partner with them, understand their priorities, you know, what was their business strategy, how did it align with their people strategy? And that enabled me to sort of A, be a better representation of the company when speaking to candidates, but also B, to be able to better present those candidates to the team. And with one particular example, in about the space of about 3 months, we reduced that from being 100% agency to 100% in-house delivery. And that's sort of the key difference I've seen.
Yeah, really like that. It's like you say, that partnership and that value add of redirecting your attention to the things that actually matter and make an impact. Yeah, must you see a huge transition in that.
Absolutely. And I think similarly with what the guys are saying today, like you would come in, you'd sit at your desk on a Monday morning, having posted a job on Friday, and you'd have sort of 300, 500 CVs to go through, and it's thinking, oh my gosh, like where do I start? Whereas now, with the Talent Unlimited, for example, we've got this great technology in place that's not making decisions for you, but it's supporting you in terms of providing that rich data that helps you to narrow down your pipeline and make sure that you're then speaking to the strongest candidates first.
Andrea, Ed, your perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think candidate experience really. So on building on what both Gemma and Ed have said, nowadays when you apply for a job, sort of 280 plus people have also applied for the same job for you. And because the recruiter has only got certain tools available to them to screen those and their own eyes to do the same, to go through those CVs, the unfortunate thing is that most likely outcome when you apply is you hear nothing. And I think that's soul destroying for candidates. It's particularly in the world that Ed and I and Andrea have worked in all our lives, is in customer facing roles. If you think you're affected by ignoring someone's CV or application, you're also ignoring them as a customer, which is terrible. And you know, a lot of people walk away thinking it's them that's the problem, having applied for the job, but the reality is their CV hasn't actually been seen at all. Remember a great example, Ed and I worked with St Mary's University, Queen Mary's University, sorry, in London, and they did an internship for us. And about 2 or 3 weeks after the internship finished, one of the guys wrote to me and said, Ed, can you help me with my CV? Because I'm not getting it, I'm being rejected for all the jobs I'm applying for. So I read his CV and he's from an engineering background, so I really had no clue what I was reading, but it looked very impressive. He'd done lots of stuff, first class this, straight A's and so on. And I said to him, are you sure you're actually being rejected for your applications? or you're just not hearing anything. It's I'm not hearing anything. I said, well, I'm afraid to say it's probably quite likely no one's actually even reading your CV. And that's terrible for candidates, but also has a massive negative impact on employers.
Yeah, and I think I'd echo, and I'm sure some will echo that resonating with me. You know, I remember particularly straight out of university applying to however many roles it was, trying to find the ideal thing or compromising on this, that, or the next thing just to get a foot in the door and get the experience and sort of get on a career ladder, so to speak. And yeah, you hardly heard anything back from so many of those applications. Andrea.
Well, and I think that's creating a real despondency and a lack of confidence out there, especially in people who are applying for the first time for their jobs, and that's just not good for our society and the strength of our future workforce. So I think that's a real shame. I think the big change that I'm seeing is that, listen, several years ago, if your company was growing and you needed to recruit more, you would get another recruiter on the team. You know, we're doing more recruitment, increase the resource in the team. That is highly likely not an option anymore. Many of the company strategies I'm seeing, the 3 and 5 year plan, is about growth, but without growing the headcount, especially in support roles. So how can we do more with the same headcount, or even in some cases less headcount, because it's expensive to do business these days, and it probably always was, but it just seems to be more challenging than ever. So there's this squeeze on those support roles. So how do recruiters keep up their, great standards, which hopefully they have, with less resource and do a great job? And that's the big challenge that's out there. And unless people are embracing technology, the right technology, by the way, then their job is just going to become very difficult. And it's no wonder that candidates aren't being replied to.
So I guess just to expand on that, and perhaps you can kick things off on this next one, because I think you're drilling into, if you were to identify perhaps in that or some other thoughts that come to mind, what's actually broken in recruitment, in the hiring, space these days, in today's market, if we were to sort of drill into things that, that's just fundamentally something that needs to be addressed.
I just think there's just not enough capacity to deal with the number of applications that are being received. And isn't it wonderful that there are lots of applications? Actually, businesses are in a great spot. I remembered some days where you'd put an advert out and actually, maybe you wouldn't get any good, particularly quality people applying. So we've almost got the opposite problem now, which is a nice problem to have. But how do you deal with all of those applications fairly and consistently to get the right person for the job? That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to find who is the right person for this job. And in order to do that, you need to go meticulously through those CVs, those application forms, whatever you're using, those assessments, and meticulously look at them against the job spec. And how do you do that properly and fairly to get the right person for your job? And it's difficult.
Yeah, it's
You're shaking your head.
no, because it's just giving me flashbacks to my career. Yeah, it's tough. And you think that the average recruiter, like we said, 280 applicants per job, but they're not just doing one job. These recruiters have got 20 jobs on their list. So that means every single day, like 180 applicants are landing on their desk. And it doesn't matter how good you are, you can't possibly give attention to that volume of candidate fairly consistently to get to the best people. You just can't do it. And it worries me that the hiring process is being scaled to the resource available, not to the qualified candidates. And I think there's a statistic at the moment that if you apply for a job, of all the applicants, only 2% of those will get the chance to go beyond their CV. 2%. And it absolutely not, because only 2% of the applicants are credible or suitable or potentially a good fit for the role. It's being scaled down to the time that's available. And I think that's the part for me that technology can help with, because it can systematically and overnight improve your capacity if deployed correctly, fairly, with consideration for the process. But I think it's shocking that only, you've got a 2% chance of getting the opportunity just to go to that next stage. And that's not sufficient. And as a result, as Andrea spoke perfectly about it's the disillusionment amongst candidates entering the marketplace today. And if you've ever worked in hospitality, I think there's this sort of shared view and understanding that for a lot of people in the UK and around the world, we are their first experience of working life, because they join us and it's their first job. And we feel sort of responsible for delivering a good experience because it sets them up. And so many people start off in hospitality and retail roles before they go on to other careers, sometimes not at all, if you're like me and you stayed in it. But we have a duty, and I think because of that capacity problem, we're sort of failing that sometimes, and finding ways to deploy technology to not just make recruiters' lives easier, but to make candidates' lives better is the key to unlock.
Puts a lot of pressure on that CV.
It really does.
Being in a position of, constantly hiring and scaling ourselves for one thing or another, and the amount of CVs we come across, you put yourself in that candidate's position, and you see some CVs come through with certain errors on it or whatever that, unbeknownst to them, that pressure's there.
We talk about CV creation, and this is another thing that's kind of changed but hasn't. And I see a lot of people say, oh, they're writing their CVs with AI. Like, that's not new. I'm going to put my hands up. My first CV, I didn't write it. There was a little advert in my local paper, and it said, if you struggle with putting, experience into words, which I did when I was young, still do, as you can probably tell, I'll help you write your CV. And I paid him, I think it was about 12 quid, and he gave me beautiful cartridge paper, lovely presented CV. I spoke to him, he wrote it down, made it look really nice. That was like 40 years ago. It's the same thing. People just getting help to put things into us. So that's no different. So I don't think we should be criticising people for using tools to help them shape and flavour their CV, because we've been doing it for 40 years.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Also, from an employer's side, the pressure on cost, as Andrea referred to already, trying to get candidates now is almost a competition about who can spend the most money on the adverts. So if you're using a job board to actually get candidates, like Lead Monster, whatever, it might be you're competing now to spend more to get seen by candidates. So it wasn't too long ago, you could put an ad on one of those job boards and get for free, get plenty of candidates in, screen them, and place your ideal person in the role. Nowadays you can't, so you're spending more, so you're competing against your competitor company to spend more money to get the right candidates. Okay, that's fine. So the person with the most money can win that. But the problem then is you sort of kick the problem down the road, because next you've got an influx of candidates who've applied for your job because you've been seen, but you've got no way of actually screening and finding out who's best. So I remember, using those platforms and logging onto mine and seeing hundreds and hundreds of candidates, thinking, oh my God, how am I going to actually filter through those and see who the best candidate there are? And of course, then you sort of go to the bottom of finding 10. You want 10, you find 10, you ignore the other 490 people in the list, and your best people may well be sort of number 500 and 499. So there's a real issue there, and it's not benefiting the employer, and it's not benefiting the candidate either. And that's an issue that the correct technology can address, I suppose.
I just think we as humans are just not very good at that job, or not many of us are very good at that job of sifting through, even if it's only 20, 30, 40, 50, but certainly more than that, CVs fairly and consistently. You go CV blind after a while, and you sort of, and it's 5 o'clock on a Thursday's the new Friday, whatever. But and I just don't think we're that good at it, to be honest.
I think it's also about freeing up your time. So you've got those inbound CVs coming through that you need to filter, but also, I guess, thinking about more of that value add strategic piece as a recruiter. You don't just want to look for or to present people who are actively looking for a role, who are coming in through inbound. You want the time carved out to be able to go and headhunt and speak to people who are comfortable in their current jobs, to see if they would be interested in interviewing for your position, because quite often a lot of the strongest candidates aren't applying. They're very comfortable where they are, and that's where it takes that extra bit of time as a recruiter.
Yeah.
So you need to go out and speak to them.
That's so true. Probably my poor leadership in the past, but you start the year with these great ideas about your sourcing and attraction campaigns and your employer brand work that you're going to get to, and then you come in on Monday morning, you've been hit with 200 vacancies, and everything stops, and you're just into the machine. And I think this isn't necessarily about reducing resource, it's about reallocation. And what, if you were to free up that time, what is it you could do? What could you get to that's actually going to improve the actual inflow of candidates in the first place? Where can you find that sort of thing?
So we're kind of identifying time, volume of candidates, cost for finding good candidates, getting yourself out there and competing with other potential vacancies in the market. I feel like we're coming on to a conversation around AI. And I'll apologies, reference some notes here, but where, from your perspective, Ed, I guess starting with you, does AI genuinely add value into this space in terms of hiring? And I guess, where is it being oversold? You know, if I'm convinced somehow it belongs in the process, how do I decide, you know, where and what?
Three questions in one there.
It is,
Where do I start?
And you don't want to get it
Where
wrong, do you?
No.
You know, and I think there's a lot of apprehension to overcome, which I guess we'll come on to in a bit, but
Absolutely, and there is a lot of overselling and mis-selling, I believe.
We have got it
going
wrong,
on.
haven't we, before?
Yeah, we have. We've made our own share of mistakes. I think where it can help is it really can help with capacity, if it's designed thoughtfully and carefully. But I think for me as a ex-HRD, AI is not the goal. AI is the tool that helps you deliver a goal. But you need to know what your goal is first. AI comes after that. So if your goal is to improve candidate experience, if it's to give more people the opportunity to shine beyond the CV, decide that first.
see, that's interesting, because I had a conversation the other day around, okay, pressures around AI, nothing to do with recruitment or hiring, by the way, just completely different context, but we've got to, you know, look into it, will you?
Yeah. And
But you-
CEOs around the world are instructing HRDs to we need to do AI. Well, what does that actually mean? What is it you're trying to achieve? What is it you want to be better?
Just do it.
Yeah, I don't care, just do AI. Yeah, it seems to be the thing. So I think first port of call with any process review is work out what it is you want to achieve first. What is it you're trying to get better at or save time on? And the AI is just like any technology. It should support your goals, not be the goal in and of itself. And so where it can help, it can free up an immense amount of capacity because it can do things for you. We're going to say that because we own a platform that does voice interviews, things like that. So there are lots of things it can do, but work out what it is you want first. I think the overpromise bit, I think things to be wary of. I know Ed will talk about one that's really dear to me, so I'll talk about another one, which is using predictive AI in hiring. I see a lot of tools that will say, what I'll do is we'll look at your successful candidates and we use that data to predict who is going to be successful next out of your candidate list. And effectively what you are doing, in my view, and other views are available, is you're institutionalizing any bias that existed in your previous hires, because that predictive analysis does not find you better people. It finds you more of the same people. And if you look at this pool and there's been any sort of leaning towards a certain demographic, it will just replicate that. So I think predictive AI in hiring, be very careful. It's great in terms of sales and stock and things like that. Predictive ordering, brilliant. In hiring, I'm less convinced, yet it is starting to emerge as I'm seeing it advertised as a feature. Fine if it's about predicting skills gaps of the future, it can be really good for that. But not if it's starting to say, well, based on your previous hires, this person will be a good candidate for you, because I think trouble lies that way.
Ed, I feel like he was pointing to.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Ed's favourite subject, which is keyword CV screen. I think is that right? Keyword screen. Yeah. So I mean, just to build on this point, technology can help, but be careful of what technology you're using. And I referred just a few moments ago to the mistake that Ed and I made. So we were hiring a few years ago, and we invested in an ATS platform at the time. And when it was demoed to us, the guy demoing it was talking through a particular screen. And Ed and I's eyes both lit up because in the corner it said AI powered. We said, oh, what's that? AI powered? Oh, yeah, it's AI powered. You can search for your candidates. Brilliant. Okay, so we thought this is going to be a game changer, because in the past we knew that if you wanted to search in your database and find somebody who had, sushi cuisine skills, for example, you go in there and you might find someone who'd been to Japan once. You might find someone who liked Pokemon, and if you're lucky, you might find someone who could make sushi. So we bought that, and unfortunately, that was exactly the same experience when we got to actually deploy it. We had all these candidates in our database, and when we came to try and search for them, we couldn't find them. And the reason was because of keywords. So it's old technology. For keyword CV screening to work and for you to be able to search your database against it, you have to make sure that every candidate that comes into your database has the right tags next to it. So leadership, sushi, whatever it might be. And of course, in the old days, when you had sort of 30 applicants per job, you could do that. But with 500 applicants per job, in some cases, it's impossible to tag all those people. So Ed and I, like a lot of people we've spoken to since we started this business, have an Excel sheet on the side with all these people's names who can do these particular jobs. Now that is, that is not a great use of technology, but it's the only way to find them. I mean, that's a great example, though, of something to be aware of buying technology that has ATS powered written all over it when it isn't actually. And there's a good reason for that. Is because agentic AI, like our platform is built on, has only been available recently. So to try and retrofit that into an ATS platform that might have been, built 20 years ago is really, really difficult to do. Yet it has to be some competition. So I think it's a real mix in the marketplace, and having the ability to have an intelligence layer on top of what the ATS does is really good. And I know we're going to talk about that later. But yeah, I think keywords is the issue, and rebadging of old technology.
And your point about if you want to put it in place, your first question has got to be, what is it going to do?
Yeah.
What is it actually going to do? Because there is so much rebadging going on.
Yeah.
It's the same product, it's just been remarketed.
I guess what comes to mind, like putting myself in the buyer's shoes, which I'd like to come on to Andrea for, but is the technical complexity of it, Gemma? Like from your perspective, how do folk navigate around making it, realize, tick all the boxes, objectives are clear and all the rest of it, but like, how do I keep this really straightforward to implement?
Yeah, so I guess the key thing is that if you think about AI, it doesn't work in isolation. It needs the data and the context underneath it. So with recruitment, you have your ATS, that is your system of record, it holds your data, your processes, your workflows. And then the way we look at it is then having that AI solution sitting over the layer over the top. And what that is doing is it's helping the recruiter to interpret that data and to make faster and more succinct decisions. And for the recruiter, the user experience is really important for us. Just to touch on what Ed said, where you've got like a separate Excel spreadsheet.
You have one, did you as well?
You didn't. No, we didn't. We tried to do complete best practice, which is where you have everything in one central solution. Because you don't want to be going to one place for your ATS and another place for your AI. The recruiter needs everything in one place, because that's what helps with the speed and to scale. And I guess sort of the beauty of Talent Unlimited is, provided your ATS has an open API, you can integrate. For us, our preferred ATS is Zoho, and part of the reason is because of that, the API integration, but also the fact that the technology is low code and highly customizable. So it means that we can customize the ATS solution so that when all of those beautiful data points are coming over from Talent Unlimited, it's in the right place at the right time in order to support the recruiter doing their role.
And Andrea, from your perspective, and it might have been a while, but like putting yourself with the buyer's hat on of, okay, I've got this objective, I'm solving for this, and when you're looking out for different ways of doing things to achieve different results, what would give you the confidence that in a solution or whatever, technology or more process orientated, that actually, this is working or that it will work?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think there are a lot of businesses who have ATS or people systems, and they're in a contract, and they're quite large systems, and they hold loads of information, and they're asking those systems, oh, what do you do on AI? And then they get a reply that says, oh, we're powered by AI now. And actually, if you don't know what questions to ask, you're convinced by that, but you don't realize it's really basic, like keyword matching, and it's not really helping you find the right people. So that just to reiterate that point, I think that happens a lot. I think as business leaders, whatever function you work in, I think we now have to be much more tech savvy than we ever were. And I suppose I'm talking to my generation mostly in this, but you know, it's no longer the premise of the tech team, the IT team to own the systems and provide that service to us. We have to see that the technology is part of our resource. We've got a human resource and we've got our tech resource, and how those two work really well together, and not be scared of it and embrace it and ask all the right questions. Because I was probably a bit like that myself. Oh, that sounds scary, don't want to go there, sounds too complicated. But actually, when you start talking and asking questions, the newer systems now, I mean, Talent Unlimited is an example of one, they're just much more agile, and actually they do integrate with your ATS. It's not this huge 1 year integration complex program management piece that it used to be. And so, you know, things are changing. So just being really open-minded, ask the right questions, make sure whatever system you're looking at does what you need it to do, and then just get behind it and learn about it yourself, so that you can talk about it within your business. That's really key.
I think we chatted a little bit about, you know, an apprehension in the market when it comes to AI. And I guess that would apply specifically in the space of recruitment. You know, regulation comes to mind, risks that are unknown or maybe known, you know, maintaining trust or not losing it in terms of candidate experience or on internal staffing processes. I guess I should caveat, we're not providing any regulatory advice or legal advice, but I think these are these are considerations that, you know, anyone looking at AI across the business, whether it be in recruitment or otherwise, should be considering. So I guess against that backdrop, how should one think about, you know, elements in that arena around bias, for example, or transparency in the process, human oversight, for example, and human judgment as part of that process?
Yeah, 2 minutes on our legal framework of bias in the AI Act. Someone said to us the other day, should we be starting to think about bias? No, you should not start to think about bias. You should have been thinking about that for the last 50, 100 years. Right? This is just a new technology, but bias is not a new thing. And you know, we had a shocking example. I'm never going to hold up the human standard as the gold standard, because let's face it, you know, we're not too great at this. And we had one example, which is shocking, but exists, where a recruiter was working late at night. She had a pile of CVs on her desk, and the boss comes in and says, "Getting a bit late, what are you doing here?" So I've got 200 CVs I need to go through. Yeah, I can sort that for you. He picked up half, and this is genuine, picked up half of them, put them in the bin, and said, "We don't employ unlucky people." So this is the standard that exists out there. And maybe not everyone does that, but these examples exist. Right? So humans are by no means the gold standard when it comes to bias. But as technology improves, it exists everywhere. And keyword AI, they say, I mean, I've heard people tell me, well, no, there's no bias in keyword AI because it's deterministic. It's just counting words. So it's not making an opinion. But it's just not true, because what keyword matching does is it takes the recruiter words that they use to describe what they're looking for and matches it with the words the candidate use in their CV. Now, what we know is that different people use different words to describe their experiences, their achievements. That can be gendered language. It could be based on their English as first language. It can be based on their cultural background. And if you don't use that same word in your CV that the recruiter used when they created the job, you're not going to get a match. Now, that in itself is not AI being biased. That's in the construct of the criteria. What is it you're actually trying to match? So bias exists there too. And it's the same with the new technology. Bias exists in LLMs. It's non-deterministic. There's variability within these platforms. So the job of both the vendors and the deployers of this technology is not to be fooled by these claims that we are bias-free. We've seen that. We went to RecFest recently, which is a big sort of trade event for recruitment technology. Multiple businesses, bias-free, slammed across their platform. So this gets on my nerves because I'm a bit of a pedant, and it also gets on my nerves when someone says to me, "I'm going to give you 110% of effort." not statistically possible, and nor is bias free. Okay, so if you see someone say bias free, ignore it. It's not true. It exists. The job of the vendor and the job of you as TA people is to minimize that variability to such an extent that it no longer impacts the outcome for the individual. But saying to someone there is zero bias in our technology is just an untruth. So be very, very wary of it. So what as a hirer, what's really important for you to understand is, well, actually there are some benefits in technology in this area because it's measurable. Okay, you can run, and we do, bias testing throughout your platform, and you can measure the impact. You can use perturbation tests where you just change a name or change a gender and see what happens to the outcome. And you do get variability in scores. That's just the same as humans. Give two humans the same CV, they're going to score it differently. But what you can now measure is what is the extent of that variability? Does it lean towards a particular demographic? Now, I'm sure others do, but I found it hard to find them. We publish our results. So we test regularly. Anytime there's a slight model change or a prompt change or a new feature, anything changes, we rerun all of our bias testing, and we do it quarterly nonetheless, and we put our results straight on our website. So as a customer, you can go and look. If you want to know where the bias is and what does it look like and what extent or variability you can see it. We're not tweaking it. We just push it straight onto the website when we run it. And that informs what we need to do. So this isn't a one and done. If we start to see drift because a model changes, and that's not within our control, but we need to adjust how we measure things. So we have a very deep evaluation framework that is always looking at drift to protect from bias and an extension of that. So as hirers, I think bias is not new. It should always be on your agenda. It's just the new technology, but at least we can measure it. So if you're speaking to vendors, one, if they say it's bias free, just tell them to get out. Two, if they can't show you how they mitigate and minimize bias, it's a red flag. Because if they're measuring it, they should be able to show you. And if they can't show you, it's probably because they're not measuring it. So insist, I would say. And then on the AI Act, I mean, again, we welcome the AI Act, the EU AI Act. It's really tough and it's stringent, but it should be, because this is hiring, this is people's lives that we're dealing with. And it becomes, again, I compare it with the human experience, you know, my short list of people that I had the right gut feel about, and my notes on interviews, which were appalling at best, you know, and if I ever went back to try and justify why I made a certain decision, my notes were terrible and I couldn't do it. You know, so again, the human experience is not great at this, but at least with technology, you can make it completely auditable. So within our platform and within Zoho and the way that we work together, every decision on every candidate, on every time and every email and every question recorded, so you can go back to it and check it. So with the AI Act, I think it is about that auditability. It's also about transparency. So if you think about this, the big cases that in the US, of course they are, it seems to be centered around two main things. One is I didn't know AI was going to be used in my application.
It's interesting.
Yeah, so be transparent. You have to tell people that you're using it, what you're using it for, how it works. That seems fair to me. Mm-hmm. And the second seems to be where platforms are allowing AI to make the decision on who gets rejected. And that seems wrong to me too. So if you design a good process, you're probably going to be all right, but you need to make sure that your platforms are transparent, that they're auditable, that the machine isn't making the decision. It can provide insights and it can suggest and push people through, but it can't be the person or the thing that says no. That's got to be a human, and it always should be. So this is welcome governance from our perspective, but when we built our platform, we were building it like that anyway, because we think it's the right way to do stuff. So yeah, I think the one watch I would have on the Act, which is just a little nuance in the language, is I've heard people replay it back to me that, well, my tech is existing tech. It's not going to be covered by the Act because that's only going to cover technology that comes in after the Act is live. Now, there is a part in the Act that is about legacy systems and whether they'll be covered, but the watch out for everyone in the room is that if you're using an ATS or a SaaS product in your hiring, you may have been using it for 10 years. But the thing about SaaS products is they get upgraded a lot. Version releases, new features, slight changes. And in doing those changes, when a change is significant enough, it will automatically pull the whole product into the act. So if your vendor is saying, hey, don't you worry about that because we existed before the act, be very careful because one version release, one new feature that adds in, and it could pull them into full coverage of the act. Now, we've got time, December 27 for the high risk stuff at the moment. Yeah, we want it to come forward. But you should not just use the AI Act when you're looking at new vendors, new technology to add in, but do consider what are you currently using and what parts of that might need to change or need to be adapted to be compliant.
Conscious of time and wanting to bring all this to life with the particular use case that we have within managed solutions, I think all of that's very valuable. And you're absolutely right. I think it's the employer owning that experience and being responsible and knowing fully what the outcome they're looking to achieve is. I guess if we're just and really briefly, if I can ask, like flip it to the candidate side from your perspective, Andrew, maybe Ed here before I hand over to Gemma and Ed again, to present what they have. What do candidates, what are they genuinely expecting from a hiring process these days? And where are employers typically getting it wrong still?
I think a candidate wants two things. They want a fair process and they want to be treated fairly. And there's two parts to that. They want to be treated fairly against all the other candidates that have applied and have sort of an equal view of their CV or whatever it is. So am I treated fairly amongst the other 300 people that have applied? And is the process fair? So is the process asking me to do relevant things to prove I've got the skills and experience that are relevant to this job? So I think there's a whole fairness piece. We all want fairness, I believe, in our lives. And the second thing is I want to be communicated with, and I want to know what's going to be the process, whether it's AI or not, and what stage, and what the outcome is. So am I being treated fairly, and am I being communicated with? And I do not think in many cases those two are being achieved. Yeah. But I do think with the right use of an AI tool, it can be achieved.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what they want, what they expect, unfortunately, are two completely different things. So they want, as Andrea says, to have all of those things, but what they expect is to press send and hear nothing back at all. And that's why, and we talk about this a lot when we're demoing our platform. That's why you get candidates who see adverts and press apply, easy apply, easy apply, easy apply, without even probably knowing what they've applied for, because they have to have this scattergun approach in the hope of hearing something back. And that is completely soul destroying for candidates. And it's something that really employers, in our opinion, need to try and address with the use of technology, because it can't be done with human beings any longer, to give candidates what they deserve rather than what they expect.
Yeah, makes sense. I think conversation-wise, we'll leave it there for the moment. Really appreciate the experience that you guys have brought to the discussion. I'm going to shuffle these chairs, or as a collective, we'll shuffle these chairs out of the way so that we can make this screen more presentable. And I'm going to look to you, James, who's joined us and gratefully sharing his screen from the laptop. So hopefully this will come through to those who are dialing in online as well. But as we said earlier, and I'll hand over to Gemma and Ed to provide a touch more context. This is a particular use case that our broader business uses within managed solutions. And I think we talked an awful lot about theory, and a lot of it, my mind or other people's minds might go to, okay, well, that's all fine and dandy, but what's it actually look like? So for those who are visual, this is sort of to bring to life a real world, case. And I'll hand over to Gemma.
Yes, okay, thank you. So in terms of my team's background, as I've mentioned, we support clients with advising on technology and how that technology can be used to support and improve processes. As a team, we are technology agnostic. However, technology that we implement for our own operations and also technology that we predominantly implement for our clients is Zoho technology. which you can see sort of behind me here. As we sort of said, the beauty of Talent Unlimited is as long as your ATS has an open API, it can integrate with your existing tech stack. It is, for us, however, sort of our preferred ATS is Zoho. And the reason being is because it is a very robust yet cost-effective tool. So it has relatively low cost for licensing. And we use it to manage our managed solutions recruitment, where we have a pipeline of around 70,000 candidates that we place on various roles, both within our managed solutions teams, but also for our clients. And the reason that we like it is because it is, as you sort of will see as we go through the demo, it is very user-friendly, so it's quite intuitive, which supports user adoption. However, it's very robust, so it has great features around building out the workflow process, the source and the sourcing, which is really important for us. It's also highly configurable. So using low-code technology, we can sort of tweak it to our existing workflows and processes. However, as the business grows and adapts and evolves, again, we can sort of tweak those workflows and processes to meet those needs. And then finally, it has great integration capabilities. So it can integrate with our existing tech stack, but it can also integrate with third parties, such as Talent Unlimited, which we will show you now. So all of this data in here is dummy data, by the way, just as a little disclaimer. But
All anonymized.
it's all anonymized, yeah, so all fake people in here. And if we look at how we do sort of the initial part of the process, what we'll do is we'll build out a job. I will then hand over to Ed, where he'll talk through sort of the engine in the background, which is Talent Unlimited, providing all of this amazing data. And then we'll come back to look at Zoho to see how the integration works and where all of this data is displayed in order to support the recruiter. So if we come to job openings, we can create our job. We can either bulk import roles, or we can create one from scratch or one from a template. I believe we're going to create one from a template. Yeah, and this form is completely customizable. So quite often with our projects, how we work is we'll have an initial sort of requirements gathering phase. So we'll understand exactly what the key data is that you need to capture on your roles, and we'll build that into the solution. And if we save that role, we can show you where the really exciting piece is, where we sort of come to the top and we can click enable AI, and this enables our AI within the recruitment process and workflow. So this is where, in the interest of transparency and needing to really understand how your AI is working, I'm now going to hand over to Ed to show exactly that.
Cool. Try and do it quickly. Yeah. So you might not see this if you're using us within Zoho, because everything is in Zoho, but it's important you know what's happening behind the scenes. So what you'll see, this is our platform, this is Talent Unlimited. Because Gemma has enabled AI, see the job, hopefully, down there. Can you scroll on down a little bit, James? Oh, there we are. There we go. So it's pulled it across, and we now have the details of that job. We're also able to create that job within our platform and do it the other way round too. So I'll just show you that quickly. So to make it nice and easy for the recruiter, you just upload the job description. Okay, well, we will start to take everything we need from that. And you can see it already understands certain things about the role from reading the job description. You attach a brand to it because our platform tailors all the voice and the tone of voice and the language based on the brand that you've selected, and you create the job. So within the job, we know that there are things it's really useful for you to be able to edit, because we believe that the humans should have full control over what the AI does, not just a one-way fits all. So you'll see the skills and qualities from the role that Gemma created in hers. It started to build these into some skill quality statements. No keyword AI anywhere in our platform. So there is no keyword matching and never will be in Talent Unlimited. It's all understanding synonyms, context. So it's not looking just for those words, it's looking for things that would evidence that this person has done this. If you don't like the ones, you can change them. You can set a pass threshold. So if you want to automatically invite strong matches through to interview to save you even more time, you can. What you can't do is automatically reject people, as we've said, very important. But you can also change how the AI behaves. So you can choose the level of seniority, and that will change what types of questions get asked of the candidate, because if you're interviewing a director, you're probably going to ask slightly different questions than if you're interviewing for an entry-level role. So that will automatically change the tone and the style. You can also say, importantly, whether previous experience is required. And what will happen then is if you say, yes, it's important, there will be an element of analysis around what jobs they've had before versus what jobs the person's going for now. But the one I prefer is when experience isn't required. That's what most keyword matchers struggle with now, because if you've got early careers, people who don't have a full history of jobs that are like the one they're applying for, what am I assessing? Well, if you choose not important on this role, it will start to look at transferable skills. So what has this person done? And what might that mean about some skills they've acquired over the time? And how does that match to what we're looking for? So for early careers where there's not a full CV of history, you can still get good insight on your candidates that will give you an indication as to their likely suitability. And then on qualifications, really important that we do semantic understanding, equivalent qualification in this. So all my career, I've failed keyword screeners as an individual, because I've been an HR director for 30 years, never did the CIPD. Every single recruiter, when they're hiring for HR people, puts CIPD in the keyword screener, and because it can't find it in my CV, it rejects me. I did a master's in HR strategy, just as equivalent, just as relevant, but old technology misses it. Ours will understand. If you put CIPD, it knows that the master's in HR strategy is an equivalent, it will still put you through. So you get a lot more controllability within this. What you also get, I think we're going to show you. Should we show that now? Yeah, so we've also got talent bank. Now, we spoke before about how difficult it is to surface old candidates, because unless you've tagged them on the way in, you can't resurface them later. Well, you can with this technology, because we've got a database of 9,300 candidates. James has just activated it. You can see the number ticking up there. We're basically running, before you advertise this role, let's have a look, because we might already have some great candidates for this who've already shown an interest in your business. And you can see it will automatically bring these people through from your database. Whatever ATS you use, we attach to it, and we can run this for you. You'll get a summary of their experience and why they've been matched. You've got the opportunity, so you can see at the moment they're matched, you can choose whether you want to exclude them, because you might recognize a name and say, oh, no, we need to get that person out of the talent bank. Or you can say, no, contact them, see if they're interested, and the platform will do that for you. And if they are interested, it will reach out, it will let them interview, and it will push them into your workflow. So before you spend a penny on advertising, I guarantee your database will be huge. Look in there first, because you will have great candidates who weren't in the 2% that got seen the first time round, or they were not hired the first time around, but they were great. So that's a great thing to do. Right, what are we on to now? So yeah, if they are interested, they'll come through to do an interview. They'll apply, they'll upload their CV. And like we did with the job description, we don't want to get people to fill out forms unnecessarily. So there'll be stuff in the CV that we can just put across. Certain things we won't know, like when can they start work, where are they based, and submit. And as an applicant, we are always explaining what's happening. We're telling them we're using AI. We're telling them what for. It's just gathering information and providing insights, but it's not making any decisions about their application. Okay, and then it says what happens next, evaluation, interview, etc. So transparency throughout is really important. But you can see the minute or the second someone applies, rather than just you can see here, smart screen, 86%. Now with keyword matches and old technology, that's about all you get, a score. No real understanding as to why it's 86% or what that means. But with our platform, instantly on application, you get a full candidate report. Now, this gives you a summary of their background, their work experience. It then produces an assessment against the four elements of the initial CV analysis, which is the skills and qualities which you set up as the recruiter when you did it, the education, if you said it was required, the experience they've got, And continuity, you know, if they had 50 jobs in the last 6 months, or do they have pretty good tenure? But beyond the score, you get the rationale too. So not just 3 out of 4 for this, but why? So what is it in the CV that led to that score? So it's the richness of information that you're able to get beyond just delivering a score that turns this from a number into insight, which is useful for the recruiter. Okay. So the same is true when someone does an interview. Now, we do voice AI interviews. We're not going to show you one because that'll take too long, but it's two-way conversational. Our platform talks to the candidate talks back. The benefit of our platform is that it can ask follow-up questions. So it's listening to the candidate as they speak. They give a half an answer or they don't answer the question, it will follow up. So if platform says, tell me what you did to improve customer service in your last job, and the candidate says, oh, my mystery shopper scores went up by 20% while I was in my last job, most platforms will say, thanks very much, here's your next question. Ours is more likely to say, well, it's great that your scores went up, but what was it you did that led to that? Because it understands that they haven't answered the question. The question wasn't what happened to your scores, the question was, what did you do? And then you get the same level of insight. So across, after the interview, you get the analysis of each skill with a justification. Remember, we can do 10,000 of these at the same time. So when we're back to that funnel of 1,000 candidates, you can interview as many of these as you like, give everyone a chance to go beyond the CV and actually talk about their experiences, which you can't replicate as a human, or at least want to see the business case for hiring the number of recruiters you would need to do this at that scale. You get the motivation and intent. So what is it about the company they like? What is it about the role that attracted them? You get insights into their skills and competencies. You get, as a recruiter, if you speak to this person and take them through to the human stage, these are the things you should ask them, because these are things that I would have wanted to follow up on if we'd had more time in the first interview. So it does a bit of interview prep for you. And importantly, and one of our favourite features on candidate experience, which we've spoken about, every single person that does an interview through this platform gets developmental feedback and coaching tips at the end. No ignoring. This isn't about whether they get going forward or getting the job. That's a human's decision. But irrespective of that, everybody gets bespoke crafted feedback based on the answers they gave in the interview against the criteria you set. Where were their answers great? And it is detailed. This goes into ganglion cells and research that someone did an interview on. And coaching tips. How can I improve my interview skills going forward? Now, this is the single thing that candidates contact, well, not us, but our customers who use it, contact us about. They're going from a position where the most common outcome, as Ed said, is to hear nothing after going through some form of process, to actually getting something that, irrespective of whether they're successful, they can take away and use to grow and to learn. That's why I think that's a big reason why we get plus 61 NPS and 4.5-star rating for the experience from candidates. So, in a nutshell, that's what we do. And then we push all of that back into Zoho.
Great, so Ed showed how everything's sort of working in the background, and what I'll now show is how all of that rich data is displayed at a job level, a candidate level, and then we'll sort of take it up to look at it from an operational level. So here we have our marketing executive role. We can click on AI overview, which gives us a really nice view of what the pipeline is. As you can see, you've got sort of the breakdown of your highest ranked candidates. You can see how many people have been screened, how many people have been passed through to complete the AI, do the AI interview, and how many people have completed. I think the key thing here that we've been talking about is AI is to support the recruiter. However, the recruiter is a human in the loop making the final decision. So where Talent Unlimited has been working in the background, all of these candidates are still here. No one has been automatically ruled out. So as the recruiter, you've got your perhaps prioritize people, but you can still go back through and screen other candidates who have applied. And then if we go in and look at a specific application, I think Sophia is one of them. And we can see here on her AI insight, as a recruiter coming in, I've got a view of smart screen, all the rationale that sits behind it. Because again, I think as Ed was saying, a lot of these tools, they give you 87% match. Okay, but what does that mean? What's the rationale? Why have they gotten that score? And this is where all of this data sits. You can also see the interview, what was the transcript, what was the questions asked. I think you can also listen back to this transcript if you so wish. So it's giving you all of that really rich data in order to be able to support and inform your decision making. And you can also download those reports if you so wish. And then if we take it sort of the step further, so if we want to look at things from an operational level, within Zoho, we can integrate with analytics dashboards. So we've got our dashboard here. It's got all of the typical data I would expect as a recruitment team. So you can see source, you can see candidate location, you can see metrics on time to fill, time to hire, candidate acceptance rate. But what I think is great and really exciting is where we're actually having all of this amazing data coming through from the AI integration. So we can see average role scoring, we can see things like key skills identified, and the skills count. So if we've got a low skills count in a certain area, what that can do is help us think about our recruitment strategy. Do we need to engage specialist SME recruiters in order to fill that skills gap? Or B, if we filter it by hired candidates, how does that then inform our sort of learning and development moving forward? We've also got metrics on candidate completion rate. We can see the percentage of candidates that have manually been overridden by recruiters. Again, we talk a lot about the recruiter as a human in the loop. The AI is not making a decision, the human is making the decision. So being able to look back retrospectively and see where recruiters have overridden AI percentage scores, just make sure that you're auditing and you're tracking what your recruiters are actually doing within the solution and how AI is supporting them. And then sort of finally, I think building on what Ed was saying, candidate satisfaction score is really important. We want to make sure that our candidates are engaged throughout the process, and we can see here what those scores were sort of based on completing sort of that initial AI part of the process. And again, we can use that to inform our recruitment strategy. So hopefully we've shown sort of an overview of how it would work in terms of your ATS being sort of your system of record with your data, your processes and your audit, and how that AI can come in to sit on over top to really support your recruiters with interpreting data and making sort of faster and more succinct decisions.
Really cool. Thanks both. I did warn those online in the room we would overrun slightly. I think great testament to running through a highly technical, from my perspective, not being the non-technical element or person in the room, all of these components that you go through every day. Gemma, I'm super impressed, but that's really brought to life, like from my perspective, and I hope others agree, the value that it brings. I'm not going to ask you to reshift chairs, so apologies for those online. And if we do need to disappear, feel free. We've got kind of further time here up until probably near the top of the hour for those who want to hang about, have coffee, continue chatting. But I guess before we come on to open the room and online for those who are remaining for kind of a question and answer time, if I can look back to the panel, if you could each sort of give one line, really super quick, punchy, because of time. If everyone leaves today and does one thing differently, perhaps putting that aside for the minute, what would that be from your perspectives, even if it's a theme?
I'm happy to go first. I think that many people are doing this, but go back and really think about what are my responsibilities, what am I trying to achieve, and how can tech, particularly AI, help me in the right way, and what's left for the human to do and how the human can do that even more, and just try and sit down and like work that out, how the both can help you do a brilliant job, and just be open-minded to that. I think that's what we all need to do more, even more of.
Okay, yeah, I've got to stop stop doing. And I know nobody in this room will be doing this, but some people probably are. Stop putting CVs into ChatGPT and Claude. You are breaching all kinds of regulations when you do that. Yet customers repeatedly show us online the internal CV assessor they've built, and they're happily uploading candidate data to. So yeah, don't use consumer grade AI tools to analyze CVs unless you've built the governing framework around it, because you're going to be in all sorts of breaching territory, not just with the AI Act, but with GDPR too.
I think just to sort of summarise the points of Gemma and Ed made just now and demonstrated too, that the ATS is a great system of record to have. It's a really smart way and safe way of measuring where candidates are in the recruitment journey. That should stay. And I think by bringing in different technologies around that and to work with it is a really cool way of developing your product. It means that you're staying relevant for your customers if you're a provider of technology. It means you're doing the best for your team if you're someone buying technology to recruit. And also, as hopefully you can see, you're giving a great service, in inverted commas, to candidates too, because you can actually do more for them and have their whole experience be a much better one. We've seen examples of ATS platforms shying away from allowing people to integrate with them, and I think it's having a detrimental effect on that. On the flip side, we've seen a lot of ATS providers who are very willing to bring in other tools to help strengthen their own product, and that is really resonating with employers. We talked to a lot of recruiters in that space who are liking the fact that their ATS allows them to integrate with new technology, and that's a good way forward.
And I think it's just thinking about how technology is enabling. How is it enabling you to be more strategic? How is it enabling you as a recruiter to add more value and make more of an impact?
Yeah, really cool. Thanks very much to the panel. A little bit of every one of you here, but also dialed in. Appreciate diaries, or my term for that, calendars get busy. So grateful that you've carved out the time to join us for this morning. And I guess we'd welcome anyone in the room and online to kind of contribute with any questions, thoughts, feedback. Thank you.
One thing which commonly is noticeable through all of your experience, the fact that you mentioned the fact that potentially in the past you would have had not more than 30 or 40 CVs possibly coming for jobs. Now it's 500, 300, 280. I heard these numbers from you all itself. What's changed in the world? Why has this become such a mass project for every single job? Because the number of people are still the same, the number of jobs is still the same.
Yeah, it's just easier to apply, isn't it?
Exactly.
You know, that you press the easy apply button, everybody's much more digitally savvy, you know, everybody's applying online, they're not having, you know, to do the old school sort of print out and send in an envelope. I mean, it's just very easy to apply. So a lot more people are doing
So
it.
are people applying when they don't need a job anymore?
Not when they don't need a job.
Because this is just so easy. Because if you look at it to a certain extent, at one point in time, if you had 30 CVs, potentially a person put an effort to try and actually put the CV through for a job and you really needed one.
Yeah.
Today, for the time, it's so easy that I feel like doing it in my lunch break whilst I have a very successful
If you're
job
slightly
myself.
dissatisfied where you are, you've had a bad day or, you know, a bad week, it's just easier to press the easy apply button, isn't it? Because, you know, maybe the level of dissatisfaction you feel in your job doesn't have to be as great these days in order to apply. Maybe actually that's a good thing in many ways for people, for employees. And I also think people are applying, they feel they have to, because they do have to apply for 100 jobs rather than 10 because of not all the CVs being reviewed.
There's a slight, I mean, I think that's the single biggest contributing factor, the ease of application, but equally the shape of jobs has changed. And when more roles are remote, your net gets cast a lot wider than within half an hour commute of that office. You know, you're now recruiting from all over the country for the same job because the flexibility on work location. So I think combination of those two things is.
I actually agree with all your comments in regards to the fact, yes, it is easier to apply. I mean, we've changed, everyone here who has built the changes from paper application processes to online. But haven't we also noticed, remember the 27 years stint with a gold-plated watch, then changed to 3.5 years average? Now I'm looking at, shall we say, newcomers that are spending 6 months getting bored and moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the behavioral, psychological changes as well.
And also, I think young people are being taught about squiggly careers. That's a word I've heard where, don't just stick in the job and get promoted up here, but try something new, transferable skills, etc. Find your way by going a bit left and right along the way and do what you're passionate about, which is great. So I think more people are trying different things.
Ed and I had dinner last night in very salubrious Nando's around the corner. And next to us at the table were a couple of young ladies, and we were so close in Nando's, you couldn't help but hear the conversation. But one of them had just started a new job. And I was listening, and the first thing not because Ed was boring, but just because I was. But one of the things she said first was, oh yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to stay. And she just started. First thing her friend said was, how's your new job going? Oh, I'm not sure I'm going to stay. My boss doesn't talk to me. Doesn't even know who I am. It's probably not for life. I think when I applied for a job, the last thing you thought about when you first joined was, well, I'm going to leave in a few weeks. And that's changed too. And of course, also, they're applying for hundreds of jobs because they know that they have to do 100 to get 2 answers. And
I bet she also applied for a job that allows her to work from home. And
Yeah,
then
probably, yeah.
moans about the fact she doesn't have relationships
Probably,
at
yeah,
work.
probably, yeah.
And is that like a little bit of a worrying sign for the way the world is working today? Because we're trying to deal with the problem. Society is just moving in a weird way, right? Because as you know, Tariq mentioned the fact that gold standards, 27 years, gold watch, all those possible factors, that's no longer so just imagine from an employer perspective, yes, you've given me a tool to try and actually find people as efficiently as possible. And I must say, it's a much better tool than what I know as is being used currently in the market. So congratulations to try and create one of those. But on the other hand, you're dealing with the problem, but who's changing the perception, the way the world is actually looking at how jobs are, and potentially that conversation in the first week of the new job.
Yeah.
I think the focus is on employers, isn't it? For that employee experience to be great so that they want to stay. And, how do you create a fantastic job for people? And actually it all ties in, because the more you can get good tech to support you, the more the resource you do have, which is probably limited, can focus on great onboarding, in-person conversations, follow-ups and check-ins, proper development for people, showing the level of care and respect that people deserve. So let's focus on that to make the difference that people don't want to leave you. That's the big challenge for businesses.
I think it's welcome that. I think that's such an important point, and I'm from the generation of the gold watches, the things like that. And you were sort of there. Yeah, I haven't got one yet, never made it. You were sort of there, and it was just assumed, and the employer had no incentive to make things better for you, because it was just a done thing. I'm there now, and that's me, and I'm going to be at 10 years minimum. And I welcome the fact that it's more transient, because it should and does in a lot of cases trigger the employers to start to think differently and say, well, this is not a guarantee for us anymore. Yeah, people aren't just going to stay because they're here. I need to do something to make them stay, not threaten them, change their desk, create an environment where people say, do you know what? My job is changing. I'm getting new experiences. It feels like a new job every year. I hear people talk about that a lot. So I think there's pros and cons to it, but I'd focus on the pros because I like to be positive. It makes employers think in more detail about what experience they're creating.
I think
But
also
ironically, it is a situation where you're looking at the behavioral change within, as we spoke about last time, there's the organizational readiness, and then there's the candidate, employee, staff, whatever title you want to give this individual, the readiness. So as the technology is changing for the organizations to support the more tech savvy, which is now norm, but the technology is also changing the mindset of the new generation, because they have shorter attention spans, less interest in a lot of, shall we say, changes. So where does it stop? It's the catch-22 situation. Is the organizations going to continue advancing, or are the organizations, as you were mentioning earlier, going to try and change and influence the target audience, being the candidate base? So I think we're in a whole new world. AI has
a whole new workshop, that one, I think. Yeah.
I think businesses have to understand, every generation, there's huge generalizations, but every generation sort of thinks a bit differently. They've been influenced in their young lives by a number of different things. They prioritize things differently, and that's not right or wrong, it's just different. So it's understanding that and then how you meet those needs.
I think also if you have a candidate that applies to multiple roles, it can also go the other way. They can have then multiple businesses wanting to speak to them. And I think that's where then as a recruiter, our role is to make a great first impression. We're often the first person within a business that will speak to a candidate. So we need to make sure that we've had time to fully understand the business, fully understand the role, fully understand what the hiring manager is looking for, so that when we speak with that candidate, it's a meaningful conversation. And I think that also builds into then retention, because if you've had a great first experience, it's sort of starting off on that right foot to then going beyond. And
We used to go into interviews with a list of things I'm going to grill them on to find out whether they're. Now I go in with a list of reasons I want to sell this business to them. And when I started, that wasn't the case. It was more, it was a given the candidate wanted to come to you. They need to sell themselves to me. And it is changed for the better, I think, which is now that, well, the business has to do as much of a selling job in the recruitment process as the candidate does, because we're looking for a match here, not for one person to take a big step towards us, but me.
And that's why I think recruitment is like one of the hardest sales jobs there are, because, if you sell a TV or you sell a car, that TV or car isn't going to turn around and say, actually, I don't want to go with that person. Whereas within recruitment, you need to make sure there's buy-in on both sides, and that takes time. And I think, again, that's where technology is that enabler to allow that recruiter to be more strategic and to be that business partner and to build those relationships that are really important.
Liam, I'm looking to you if there are any questions on the line.
Nothing's come through online here.
That's the problem with AI.
Well, I'm gonna take
User error.
I'll take
Get a
some
chance to
initiative
come
and
there.
say, really welcome the contributions. For those who want to stay, we've got plenty of time here if you're not in a rush back to where you need to go. But I am conscious of those who do have schedules to stick to today, and we have overrun. But it's been great. So
Thank
thanks
you
for
for
coming.
hosting us, Brian.
Yeah,
Well
thank you so
done.
Yeah,
much.
thanks for the contributions, and again, grateful for all of you taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you.